Hey, it's me! Oh,
It's a me. I built a working mirror that changes the reflection depending on the player. In Minecraft, using just redstone. This is that. It works in vanilla survival, but it works better if you use the PlayerHead pack that they use on Hermitcraft, or you allow people to use the PlayerHead command. This command here. Brief overview. It uses the player detection that I showed in my last video. Check my channel for that. To deploy an armor stand which represents each player. And using the new-ish armor trims, you can get actually pretty close to a lot of people's skins. As you can tell, I've made two different machines. That's because I made this originally for my barbershop. In my barbershop, these little stools use lightning rods. And so to match where a player would be standing, because the player would be standing basically midway between these two blocks, I needed to create a way to align and keep an armor stand on the matching side on the other side. Whereas I think a lot of people using mirrors, fake mirrors in Minecraft, might be doing just regular standing mirrors. So I've also made a version that works in the middle of a block. So I think actually I'll quickly talk about how I realized you can make pretty good approximations of people's skins now using the armor trims. And you saw the skins of me and Hollie in the intro. Armor trims are actually really good for this. They can add a lot more vivid colors and they can add some sort of intricacies to designs that you just couldn't get before. So these are some examples of Minecraft YouTubers I like that I think lend themselves quite well to the armor trims. I've tried others and these work less well. The real point with this is that because you can't stack armor trims on top of each other, Mojang, if you're listening, can you add that? And maybe some more armor trims as well. You can only really get two colors out of any set of armor trims. I think it works really well for like Exuma and Grian here, who really they're just like a vivid one color, more vivid than you can get from leather armor anyway. Or they have features that are iconic enough that like the approximation works in your brain. And it really depends what the focal point of a skin is. So like I think Mumbo here looks really weird that he doesn't have the red tie, but it has lots of versatility. And you can end up with quite a few different interesting skins. So for instance, I think even though my skin clearly has more going on than this armor stand does, it's still a decent approximation, especially through some black stained glass. Right, so how does it work? It uses this exact same principle with the Allay player detection that I showed in the last video. Essentially, an Allay belonging to each player is stuck inside this block here on top of a daylight detector, and each of them have a unique item dedicated to that player. This one has redstone that represents me. This one has a note block representing Hollie. And you can use that to use regular old item filtering to create a signal for each player. So it'll try to give this redstone to me if I was standing there. It drops down, uses some leaf stone to send the item really quickly, but not instantaneously. If you send it instantaneously, it doesn't work. Through some droppers, they get detected using some regular old item filters. Thank you, Impulse SV. Using some observers, this line of droppers get powered in the same tick, but because of redstone ordering, they get powered in a way that the item gets instantly transported into this dropper, and then this instant dropper elevator gives it back to the Allay. This, as you might imagine, causes a repeating redstone signal. So it's a pulse that goes off every this amount of seconds. I've just given some work to Future Joe there. Well done. Which means it needs to be turned into a continuous redstone signal. And that's what this does. These are pulse extenders. So it's not tileable in the way that most people think of tileable. It's A-B tileable. So two layers right next to each other can be stacked however many times sideways. And the reason is basically that they're the same thing but back to front. So no power can get transmitted laterally. Can't go from one side to the other. Now you end up with a continuous signal. That continuous signal is turned into a single pulse here, which goes into what I realized after I'd created it is a button selector panel. This is one of those times that I accidentally invented something. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I can't believe no one's done. No, everyone's done this. Yeah, it's a button selector panel. You can see 100 tutorials for this on YouTube. And the goal of this is that even if there is multiple inputs here, you only get one output at the end. So no matter who's standing on there, only one armor stand gets put out. Then this extends either the slime or honey, like I said, AB tileable, and goes down to this. I guess this is also technically a pulse extender, but it's a very short pulse extender. It just creates a pulse long enough to output 6 items it's designed for, but you only usually need 5. But sometimes people's skins are more complicated, and this is where the armor is stored. So these droppers here represent each player. When someone is standing in there, that signal comes down to here, powers this 6 times to send the items into this. These droppers are powered, creating an instant dropper line, same as before. There's a small delay with this observer to this instant dropper line. Again, same principle. Redstone power propagates from the source, meaning even though it turns on in one instant in a game tick, the events created within it are ordered depending on how close they are to the redstone source. So the redstone source is here, which means this goes on first, and this, then this, then this, and so on and so on. So essentially the item gets teleported from here all the way to here. This signal then goes into this instant dropper elevator, sending the items into this dispenser, which dispenses the armor onto 2 armor stands that are placed here. The next thing is how we get the armor stands working. Back over here, as well as sending this signal here, as long as any of these are on, this repeater here is powered. This is used partially for resetting this, because obviously if nobody's standing in front of the mirror, you want the whole thing to reset completely, and that's what this will do. But also it sends a signal all the way down here to this. This is a piston retractor. It just pulls this block down and then sideways to create a nice opening that either, if there's an armor stand here, it'll fold straight down, or when you're ready to deploy an armor stand, it'll open to allow it to pop up. Then this signal here creates a signal if there's a change in power. Every player will have a unique redstone power on this block. For instance, if I'm standing up there, this one will be on, meaning this one will be power 15, meaning this will be power 14. But then if Hollie stands there, this one will turn on, changing this to power 13, sending a signal. And then if someone leaves or comes in, obviously that changes this power and the signal will be sent as well. Right, so what does the signal do? It goes into this pulse extender, but this time it's used as essentially a long delay. Once this turns on, this torch will turn off, and then after however long the pulse extender takes is when it turns back on, essentially acting like a really long repeater. This is separated in 2. The timings have to be quite precise. So it goes into these repeaters, which sends a pulse up to this block, which does 2 things. The first thing it does is go into this repeater. Because this repeater is set to 3 ticks, this observer will detect it turning on and turning off, which essentially means you turn a single pulse into 2 pulses, which is just a useful little trick if you need it. The reason for that is because there's going to be 2 armor stands here, and so to get rid of both of them, you need 2 arrows, is all. So there's a dispenser here filled with arrows. It goes off twice, destroying the 2 armor stands. Then the signal before propagates up here, gets detected by this observer, goes into these repeaters, and then split into 2 again. This time, it's used to deploy 2 armor stands using the same trick as before. It then uses the this piston and slime here to launch these armor stands, which you can see here. Yeah, it launches these armor stands across, perfectly aligning it with the lightning rod up here, so that you're aligned with exactly where the player should be. See, there you go. Now there's 2 armor stands ready to go right here. Then when we left the signal off before, it goes into this observer, and again, split in 2. This side goes into this sticky piston here, which is this piston, which launches this slime block, pushing the armor stand, now covered in the armor. Remember, this dispenser has covered it in the armor of our choice. And finally, that signal from before goes into this observer repeater torch and up to the block retractor again, giving just enough time so that the armor stand has enough time to pop up, and then the block comes back up just in time to catch it. If no one else is standing there, you just left, then this pulse extender will time down, and then after enough time has elapsed, it will realize nobody's there. This will turn off, resetting these. This will change this power level, going all the way down, boop, 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 and then opening this and destroying the armor stand. And an important point, because this will then no longer be powered if nobody's standing there, this will be forced to be powered, meaning this block retractor can't be activated because it's always powered. When this armor stand is destroyed, the items will drop and get picked up by this hopper minecart. The placement of this hopper minecart and the armor is important on top of this mossy carpet. Mossy carpet is not sticky to slime. As soon as this slime block retracts, these fall straight on the mossy carpet, don't touch the slime, and so don't bounce. Then whatever's inside this hopper minecart gets put into this hopper. Then it goes over this item sorter for armor stands. Obviously you don't need to use diamond blocks here. The armor stands get recycled back into the system, so you don't actually have to waste any armor stands. After the armor stands are sorted out, it goes into this dropper here. As long as there's an item in this dropper, this observer clock fires, automatically dropping any items that are in there. Importantly, this is set to 3 repeater ticks. The items have to get picked up by hoppers, and hoppers have an automatic cooldown when they pick up new items. So I found that 3 repeater ticks was the minimum requirement. So the item gets put into this water stream. They get perfectly aligned between these 2 anvils. Now these items come down here. They need to go into the appropriate dropper again. Instead of sorting the items using actual item sorters or Allays or whatever, instead I just use the fact that the only hopper that should be unlocked is the one from the person that was just standing on the block. There's still a delay before the items can get to this point again. So only one person should ever have the item be available for pickup here. So you just have to time it appropriately. Again, I just use a pulse extender, but this time a long pulse extender and an AB tileable pulse extender. For people who don't know how pulse extenders work, essentially they're just, you put in a full signal at the end here, and each of these comparators adds a delay to that signal, and because there's 2 redstone here, the signal goes down by 1 power each cycle. So it takes 15 cycles before it actually goes down to 0. In this situation, it actually pulses, but the pulse isn't long enough for this 4-tick repeater, so it acts as if it's a single power. Again, I just use the pulse extender as a really, really long repeater. When the signal comes down here, it's timed so that the hopper for the person that was just standing there and has just left stays open until all the items come through, and then it locks that one and unlocks the new person's. Or if there's nobody standing up there, it just doesn't do anything. But it takes that long to make sure all the items have been cleared. Right, and that's essentially how it works. I think that's everything. Oh, so the reason the armor stand is fired here is because armor stands get dispensed by a dispenser in the orientation that the dispenser is facing. So because the dispenser is facing forward, the armor stand gets placed forward. But wanting to align it with this lightning rod, there are ways of doing it, but it was easier for me to just create it here and fire it at the lightning rod. What's much easier is this full length version mirror here. Since it doesn't need to use the slime firing mechanism, as the armor stand can be placed just right in the middle of a block. So you just need the dispenser, and you don't need all that other stuff. Oh, a very important point I found in testing this. Always, and look at me, always cover your note blocks. So here it's covered by a target block. Here it's covered by some glass. Here it's covered by some string. But always cover it with something, because I spent ages troubleshooting why this wasn't working. Because the periodic pulsing would just stop out of nowhere. I use note blocks a lot because they're great for updating blocks. You can, like, this piston here is getting quasi-connectivity powered by this target block. So if it doesn't get an update, it doesn't move. And in my Redstone brain, I put all these note blocks in here, forgetting that Allays love music. So the whole system would fire up, and then suddenly it would stop working because the Allays are like, oh my god, I gotta listen to this music. They love boogieing, but they're doing a job. So I'll build this in my survival world soon. If people are interested in seeing that world, let me know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, or learnt something, or had some sounds put on in the background, however you use YouTube. For people that care, my PhD is going well. Almost finished. I'm really looking forward to being finished and having time to play Minecraft. And I can put out more videos, which I'm looking forward to as well. And if you want to build this yourself, wild. But I'll add the world download, obviously, in the description below. Yeah. Right. I never know how to finish these.